Asked about the people many times, and there's been a lot made about probably the black or white community, but I vividly remember there was lots of white people there throwing bricks and stones. I really don't believe it was the black and white issue. It was a community issue because of the clampdown of the police at the time on the major crime in Brixton, and it was a revolt against what they saw as heavy-handed policing. I don't think it was so much black and white. The unfortunate thing was they put a lot of local business people out of work by smashing their shops and restaurants and the pubs, burning down. There was lots of major incidents here, and it was the community that suffered. It wasn't the outside, it wasn't the police, it wasn't the MPs who suffered, it was the local community. I've said many times in my career, the fire brigade was always welcomed at an incident. Everybody was happy to see us. They might be in distress, it might be a funny incident, but everybody was happy to see us until that day. That was people's aggression, and it turned towards, I don't think it was just the fire service, traffic wardens, taxi drivers, anybody that moved was fair game really. But up until that point, the fire brigade had always had a tremendous rapport with the public. It was never an issue. Yeah, well, when we was driving, we could hear all the bricks and bottles and stones smashing against the fire engine. And when it came through the windscreen, I was smashed in the chest. I thought, and it still lives with it, I thought I was going to die. I thought, that's it. And the big thing was my officer in charge kept saying, don't hit anybody, and I realised that if I hit the public, they would probably stop the fire engine, climb in and kill everybody on the fire engine. That's how serious it really was. And we was absolutely terrified that they was going to stop that fire engine. How I got it through without hitting anybody, to this day I don't remember that bit at all. But the injuries were suspected ruptured spleen, 2 broken ribs, broken left arm, but I just thought I was going to die. And then when they took me to King's College Hospital, there was about 30 or 40 people laying there with the same sort of injuries. Police officers, ambulance drivers, traffic warden. So it wasn't just the fire service, it wasn't just me, I realised that. But, and I was diagnosed some years later with post-traumatic stress syndrome. But as years go by, it dims, but the day still lives with everybody, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, it's very well documented. The police were trying to clamp down on major crime in Brixton, and they were being very successful. And I think the Scarman report led to the fact that the police had clamped down on the gangsters, and maybe there was people in the background stirring them up, because I do vividly remember afterwards reading a lot of outside people had come into Brixton and caused a lot of the trouble. So that was one of the big issues for everybody in Brixton. And I lived in Streatham, I went to school in Brixton, I'm a local lad. It was so unusual for us. I was living in West Norwood, I was working in West Norwood, I've been brought up in Brixton all my life. It was a lovely multicultural community to live in. And to see these people turn, we could understand, I don't agree with it, we can understand them turning on the authority, but the fire brigade are not the authority. And it was so alien to us. And then, of course, the night shift has to come out and do it all again. And now everybody's very aware of what's going on. And it was terrifying for everybody. It was terrifying. I wasn't the only firefighter to be injured. And in fact, that evening, they stole the turntable ladders from West Norwood and smashed those up as well. And the crew on that had to run for their lives. So the knock-on effects. But a lot of these people were not from this area, and they walked away. They walked away. And the culprits were never prosecuted, never got caught. You know, it was just too many people here. Well, we don't know. There was people coming in, and I think the report said at the time, people were coming from as far away as Birmingham. but they were already here when the riot started. So there was some undercurrent already involved over the last on the previous 2 or 3 days. Those people were already down here, and they were coming from Southfield, from all over London, and as I say, there was many down here from Coventry and Birmingham, ready to do whatever they wanted to do. It seems to be very mirror image of it, because they were all complaining at the time about the way the police was governing London. But it seems this time that the police didn't have the resources to react. And as we know, a couple of days they decided to let the rioters do their own thing. But of course today they've got the mobile phones, etc., to communicate. We always wondered how they did it in the early 80s. How did they communicate? We have no idea how they did it. But it's certainly very similar to that situation. Yeah. No, I wasn't here. As I say, I saw all the pictures afterwards, and definitely it must have gone on, definitely. Because the shops, the big shops stayed, Woolworths and Bon Marsh, they stayed here, but a lot of the small retailers just had to leave because they were devastated. Their shops were completely looted. But I didn't see it, obviously, I wasn't here long enough. Well, it is tragic because my wife worked here for 30 years. She works in a solicitor's office in Brixton, in the High Street. I went to school here, I lived in the community, and it's devastating to see local people. They might only own one shop, they're getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to do the newspapers, and and then their livelihoods are just taken away by people that have got a gripe and a grievance against the government, against the police, but for some reason they feel they can steal from the local community. I've never understood the connection there, never understood why they turn on their local people. Well, you see a lot of people talking about this on the TV when they come back from the war and stuff like that, and sometimes you wonder how can that possibly be. But now, even 30 years on, I have difficulty travelling around Brixton on my own. And if there's large crowds, even on holiday, I'm very aware of the large crowd around me, and I have to be with somebody. It's irrational, I know, because it's not going to happen again. But it does stick with you, and you are worried about these things. And if I'm driving around Brixton, I take a big route around to avoid coming up Mountain Road, Shakespeare Road. I just try and avoid it. It's just anxiety, really, that's all. Yeah, normal fire service day is cleaning the machines, doing the out duties, checking outside the shops and restaurants, just doing our job, and answering a few calls. I'd only been a driver for 2 weeks, so for me it was practice driving the fire engine. Every time we went out it was nice and steady and slow, and I was a very inexperienced driver. And then late in the afternoon we had the call for the car alight, and we all thought it was a bit of a joke, really, that she was just going probably get overtime because it was a late call. And as we drove down into Brixton, into Mountain Road, the police let us through. There was a police cordon. We still didn't think much of it, didn't know why the police were there, and they just let us through. And as we drove up Mountain Road, it was the area was just completely full of people standing there shouting. We didn't know, we still didn't know, it may have been a carnival, I didn't know what it was. And then the crowd let us through and then shut down again. So they'd obviously got us through into the crowd, and then they just, all hell broke loose. They just, bricks, bottles, stones, anything that was coming into the cab. Well, at the time, the driver, because you have to get out the fire station so quickly, the driver doesn't wear fire kit. The driver just has a t-shirt and trousers on. So I had no protection at all. And an 8-inch piece of paving slab came through the windscreen and smashed me in the chest. The officer in charge just said, if you can keep going, don't stop. Don't kill anybody, but don't stop. we did manage to get through up to where the car alight was, and I couldn't get the fire pump to work because I was in too much pain. So the other crew from Brixton had arrived. They got the fire pump to work, and the guys were very, very professional. They all jumped out, did their job, put the car out. Then they suddenly realised that I was still in the cab, and an ambulance was called, and I was ferried out in an ambulance. Unfortunately, they smashed the ambulance up as well on my way out, so I had 2 lots of it. But I was probably only there for 5-10 minutes, and I didn't do any firefighting because I just couldn't get out of the cab. And then I was off work for 6 weeks.